Zohran Mamdani, a very interesting person, an interesting race. Let's be joined right now by political analyst, friend of the program, Brian Sobel. Brian, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. Who is Mamdani, and why did people support him in such a strong way?
It's the most interesting story, Andy, because you had some familiar faces in the race for New York City mayor. But Mamdani, who is a state legislator, is one of these folks that kind of comes from the outside in, much like maybe a horse race, which politics is often equated to. He's young. He's a socialist progressive. He is staunchly for the Palestinians against Israel. He is a Muslim, and there are a million Muslims in New York City, or New York City area. If he were to be elected mayor of New York at 34 years old, which he would be if he were to be elected, he'd be the youngest mayor in New York City history since 1917, when they had a quote-unquote boy mayor who lasted one term, by the way. So, but what he has been able to do is harness younger progressive voters. But I caution, as I often do in these kinds of discussions, that turnout in New York City was about 30%. Among Democrats. So that means a lot of people didn't show up. And of course, they had horrible weather, very, very hot and all that. A lot of people didn't show up, but he sent a shockwave through the system with his win.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a heat wave there, but the shock wave in terms of the politics, and his platform includes those rent freezes, free bus rides, no cost of childcare, major investments in housing affordability, talking a lot about equity. And you also mentioned the label, the Democratic Socialist. And I think a lot of people are gripping to that, including Mamdani himself. How has he leaned into that grouping?
Well, you think about it, he has the support of a very progressive wing of the Democrat Party. People like OAC and Bernie Sanders and others have all endorsed him. And he was able to paint this a little bit about, old versus new. The people that supported Cuomo, who lost, and is out of the race unless he decides to run an independent campaign, were people like Bloomberg, Bill Clinton, kind of the older guard of the party and the older guard in New York City. And so he, the young Mamdani, represents a new look, a fresh look for a lot of younger voters. Now, again, voter turnout being what it is, if Eric Adams, the mayor, can run an independent campaign, I don't know what Cuomo's going to do. I suspect he'll drop out, but maybe not. But there's still a race to be run here, and of course, the Republicans have their candidate too.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And we talk about it, just the amount of candidates, and there will be a plethora for voters to choose from come November. I want to ask you, because it was interesting going into this Democratic primary, very different than what we're going to see at a general election. How do you expect his campaign to change, if at all, over the next several months?
Democrats in New York and New York City in particular have to decide whether they're interested in a progressive socialist mayor. And what does that mean for the city of New York? Does that mean that the police go back to being second tier as they were under Mayor de Blasio, or does it mean they lots of services may be made available? I would say that, in a sense, his campaign is sort of a Bernie Sanders campaign. If it's free, it's for me. And that appeals to a lot of young people in particular who frankly, in many cases, don't pay a lot of taxes. So the more you can offer them in terms of, here's something for nothing, that's very attractive. For other people in the system who are paying taxes, who are trying to make it in New York City, whether his age, his inexperience, a lot of other things will weigh against him is yet to be seen.
Yeah, and of course, a lot of those initiatives, those promises that he has made really resonate with the working class group there. So it's going to be interesting to see how he tries to separate himself if he continues down this path come November. Let's talk about a little bit more at a national scale because New York, we've heard criticism from Republicans, President Trump talking about different mayors of different cities, Brandon Johnson in Chicago, Karen Bass in Los Angeles, all the really blue cities with a now Democratic socialist taking the Democratic primary. Do you think Republicans will continue to lean into that fact? And do you think the Democratic Party at large is concerned about having Mamdani there at such a forefront, such a name recognition growing?
Well, I think for more middle of the road Democrats, that he will be a problem in New York City, especially if he's elected and he tries to roll out these very, very progressive programs. And the thing is, he can try, but New York City is a big, big city with many, many complexities, and so a lot of these simple solutions, like just freeze all rents in the city, just give away this, give away that, is very reminiscent of what we have seen in some other large, big cities that are blue Democrat cities, and frankly, it hasn't worked. The idea that you can do away with the police doesn't work. It invites crime. And eventually it rebounds against the person in office. So if anything, he would be wise to look at the failures of some of these programs in other large cities controlled by Dems and try to carve out something differently. But he's got a core philosophy, Andy, about what he's running for and who he is. And I'm not sure he can break from that very easily.
Yeah, and of course, I think on social media after his victory, he quoted Nelson Mandela saying that it's not impossible until it's always impossible until someone does it, in which he did with that Democratic primary. I do want to put up just this, a statement from actually the President of the United States just coming down within the last 15 minutes about Mamdani, talking about this. And he said, it's finally happened. The Democrats have crossed the line. Zohran Mamdani, a 100% communist lunatic, has won the Dem primary on his way to becoming mayor. I don't know if that's a endorsement from President Trump about who might in turn win in November, but you see just what the Republicans are latching onto in terms of this. Will we see this be a problem come November? And do you think Democrats are pushing him a little bit more to the center?
Well, probably not, in the sense that he's pretty well articulated where he's coming from. If he started moving to the center, say like a California governor, who, in the case of the governor in California, has started moving to the middle because Newsom understands he cannot be elected nationally with a lot of the progressive programs he supported in California. So you're seeing him making a move. I don't see that in the case of Mamdani, because that's not who he is, and that's not how he has been successful so far in doing very well in the primary. Again, 30% turnout, but he did win by 10 points or more. So he's the leading person to look at. How other Dems who may want to run, who are well run, will try to characterize him as this moves to the general election will be interesting to watch. But he's got a lot of momentum today.
Yeah, that is so very true. And people are latching on to his views, some of the stances that he has. And of course, he's very staunch in those beliefs. I do want to ask you, because we talk about Mamdani being just 33 years old, a very youth movement in terms of that. We heard from President Trump during his campaign last year how the youth movement, how that group and demographic really vaulted him back into the White House. That seems somewhat similar, at least in terms of the age group that is supporting Mamdani. You mentioned the voter turnout in a primary, but how much might that a younger group of voters really influence this election?
Great question. I think if young people are motivated, like any voter bloc, if they're motivated, they'll come out and vote. One of the problems for years and years has been apathy. Just, hey, I don't know that my vote's going to make a difference, so I've got other things to do on election day type thing, or even returning mail-in ballots. But if they find somebody they can really get behind, I believe they will come out and vote. And that's what happened with Donald Trump. He had a lot of people who didn't typically vote who said, I want that guy in the White House, and went out and voted for him. So we could see the same sort of effect in New York City. The age piece of it, to be honest, doesn't bother me a whole lot. It's not about age, it's about philosophy. It's about, what's your plan for New York City? This amazingly complex, beautiful place, really, in many, many respects. And yet beset with all kinds of issues like all big cities in America. What's your plan once you get in there? And it can't be, I'm going to give everybody everything they want, because that is a budget buster, obviously. And you can't curtail the police when people are being assaulted on the streets. And so he's got a lot of questions he's going to have to answer between now and election day. But he could turn out a lot of young people who just say, I want something different. I want somebody who looks more like me, young, more progressive. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and of course, going up against the likes of former Governor Andrew Cuomo, incumbent Eric Adams, it would certainly be a new path forward. We'll see what happens. As you mentioned, all of those promises that he made in terms of no child care, free bus rides, rent freezes, investments in housing affordability. We'll see how much those can actually be moved if he becomes the next mayor. All right, Brian, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Great insight as always.
You're very welcome. Look forward to chatting with you soon, Andy.
All right, take care. All right, great conversation there as always, talking about this Democratic primary there with Ron Mamdani.